Welcome back, dear friends. Max here, your usual host. Today we conclude the Tartaria series with chapter 7.4 called Back to the Future. This is another juggernaut of an episode. It will be rather long. I can't exactly know how long until we finish. So please do take your favorite beverage, sit down in a comfortable chair, and let's get through this. In this episode, I have a staggering amount of 29 different videos I have to show you, and a lot of screenshots and pictures. It's a very interesting presentation, and I beg you, please, to stick with me and see this through all the way through, as they say. Now, the usual cleaning or housekeeping. Please note the Amazon page where you can find and purchase the book. Also note our Rumble channel that is growing slowly but steady. We have our Brighteon channel as usual, and we also have our YouTube channel. So please go and find me there, give me likes, and please do spread the word. Now, the following chapter will be very complex to convey. I will speak here of issues and concepts that are hard to grasp for most people. Some will even be offended. That's fine. I'm not writing or saying this in order to make friends. My task here is to open doors to different possibilities and describe the history we lost in a manner that is as comprehensible as possible. This will require a large amount of video links and pictures, so this chapter will likely be very information heavy. We now know who the Khazarian mafias are, and we've seen their manipulation schemes over time. We have also seen and understand how they have managed to bury history and change our perception of the reality that surrounds us in order to gain control of our minds. What I describe here is the second worst crime of all. Wait until you hear the number one later on in the book. We speak of energy. As we know, we live in a reality where everything is measured in currency. We spend this currency by purchasing the products we need to live our daily lives. The objects we purchase, a car, a house, a loaf of bread, or a chocolate bar, are produced using energy. In the cost of all the items around our realm, energy is calculated to be approximately 60% of its value. Think of it like this. Your chocolate bar has gone through a long process before ending up in your mouth. You have to harvest the cocoa plant, energy. Ship the cocoa to the production facility, energy. Process the cocoa to a product, energy. Pack it in wrapping paper, energy. Put it in a multi-pack box, energy. Transport it to a distribution center, energy. Ship it to the supermarket, energy. All of this energy, may it be electric, gasoline, or oil, natural gas, has a big impact on the bottom line of all production in our known world. The system has been created that way, and we have always been told that we are at the cusp of mankind's creativity and development. We've taken enormous strides in our technological advancement, this is true, but there are some bits that do not fit the pattern. I will show you a good example right here. We transmitted the first radio wave late 1800s across the ocean. That was Guglielmo Marconi. Now in 2024 we have mobile phones, which is an incredible advancement indeed, but maybe not for the purposes we imagine. We invented a combustible engine around the same time, and we still use it today, 200 years or so later. The same exact technology. Why don't we have anti-gravity and flying cars by now? Is this selective advancement? Yes, it is. Rockefeller needs us to buy gasoline, or the entire world would stop overnight. This is the level of control the Khazarian mafia has over our daily lives. It's undeniable. What if energy was free? What would happen then? What if energy could be harvested using technology in a clean and safe manner? Now let me tell you a story and bring you back to the future. The reason I told you this chapter would be exciting was because what I am about to explain is a fantastic story of a civilization that did just that. They were so advanced, in fact, and knowledgeable that they found a way to harness energy from the air. Yes, you heard that right. The main reason that Tartaria and their architecture needed to be eliminated and their history erased was for this very reason. Free energy could not be allowed to exist because the Khazarian mafia could not make money on it. It was indeed free. Not only did they harvest the energy, they learned about frequency healing, wireless transmission of electricity, and other things that we will describe. I mentioned earlier that it was astonishing that this civilization built all this structure with such beauty and no consideration of budget or deadline. Well, this is why. They were more advanced than we are today. Yes, we have mobile phones, but these gadgets are meant to distract us from the really relevant things in life. We are indeed going backwards, not forwards. The structures that the Tartars built were not just mere residences or dwellings. They were a working technology. I will start this presentation with this little video link here from Iwar Anan that we heard before, in the past, that explains this exact point in better detail. Here we go.
Welcome to the future. Except it's the past. The future came and went, and we missed it. The magnificent architecture we see throughout our realm, in which the official liars and controllers of our world have termed historicist, neoclassical, Renaissance, Gothic, and so on, all belong to one whole unified civilization. A civilization so developed they had harnessed the power of electromagnetism to such a high degree that they not only built these huge structures, but also crafted them with utter finesse and beauty. A celebration of their own technological advancement. The structures were designed with the sole intention of harvesting and generating electromagnetic energy and distributing it across the world. Their cities, towns, an entire way of life ran and depended on the use of free, clean, and powerful electromagnetic energy. The energy was harnessed and collected from the ionosphere above our heads through the use of antennas, spires, domes, and towers. All the impossible structures we see today have been repurposed and rebranded by our controllers and the citizens of the 19th century. This is not a church. This is not a mosque. This is not a castle. And this is not a government building. These are generators, powerful and gargantuous. They would collect and generate the electromagnetic energy, which was then stored in huge power stations and distributed and redirected by sophisticated, advanced structures, one of which is the huge electromagnet, or what we've come to know as triumphal arches. The energy was stored in batteries and capacitors, such as towers and obelisks. All cities were constructed across our realm in the form of one big interconnected power grid, much like a huge computer motherboard.
So, that's a nice slap in the face to begin with, don't you think? But there's more. Follow me. To understand how this principle works, we must discuss something called the ether. We have heard this in previous chapters, haven't we? Remember the bumblebees? Many have heard of this, but our academia has burned it and buried it since long time, thanks to Einstein, by the way. And it's not considered anymore, for good reason, because it is the ultimate secret that they have taken from us. The ether is everywhere around us, and all-encompassing. It's the glue that holds our quantum realm together. It contains information of the past, a sort of registry. Everything that has existed lives there. It is also a source of enormous energy. 1 square centimeter of ether could be enough to electrify an entire nation or more. And the Tartars knew this, and they harnessed it. Let me show you.
While the exact process by which they were able to extract the ether is deliberately hidden from us and remains unknown, the structural remains that humanity has since repurposed and reused as architecture offer us many clues as to how it all worked. The evidence is everywhere for those with eyes to see, and once you see it, it becomes so glaringly obvious that you'll kick yourself for never noticing in the first place. The matter is very complex, and it will take time to really flesh out. So for now, let's have a closer look at some of these structures, and I will introduce some basic concepts. As we continue our journey, we will explore everything in more detail. We see them everywhere. On top of all these magnificent structures, towers, spires, and pinnacles that rise into piercing antennas. It was through these complex antennas that the ether was harvested. You see, after the Great Reset of the 1800s, the enemy fractured the old world's unified understanding of God and created multiple religions to try and hide God and justify the existence of such grand and beautiful technological structures. And I know this may trigger some people, but stay with me, I will not let you down. But for now, it is critical to understand that a lot of the religious icons that adorn and make up these antennas were never indicators of different religions in the old world, nor were they intended to be. they signaled something else entirely. They are usually made from copper and gold. Both are excellent conductors of electricity. In many of the structures we call cathedrals, the symmetrical spikes on the pinnacles worked in a similar fashion, extracting ether from the ionosphere. Once harvested, the energy would inevitably have been drawn down into the top larger portion of these domed structures. When examining many of the interiors of these domes, we come to realize that they rely heavily on symmetrical ornamentation. This is achieved by indentation or cavities in the masonry. In the world of electromagnetism, a cavity resonator works through symmetry to produce oscillation or vibration of energetic particles. Symmetrical shapes force energetic particles or ions to vibrate in a constant manner. Is this why we see perfect symmetrical ornamentation within the ceiling of many domed structures? It no doubt sounds absurd, but the majority of these structures also feature a smaller type of cavity resonator, or what is more appropriately termed cavity magnetrons, that offer some clarity as to the real function of these structures. A cavity magnetron is a high-powered vacuum tube that generates microwaves using the interaction of a stream of ions with a magnetic field while in the cavity resonator. A magnetron operates through a hollowed, symmetrical vacuum. It emits powerful microwaves that can act as a source of free energy. If you break the symmetry or close the vacuum, it no longer functions. But can you see the resemblance? These structures were never intended to hold glass within them. The controllers added the stained glass to the rose windows to shut off the magnetron's function. They closed out instruments of free energy. And they are everywhere in these structures. Interestingly, if you look at the geometry of entire sections of the structures themselves, then it becomes very evident that they functioned in their entirety like a cavity magnetron to generate energy. All cavity magnetrons consist of a central heated circular metal chamber in which the current leaves, and it's called a cathode. Look at that word. Cathode. Does it remind you of another word? Cathedral. Cathode. Like with everything else, they corrupt the truth and hide things in plain sight. The controllers removed most of the cathodes integral to these cavity magnetrons, but there are some structures today in which you can see traces of the old cathodes still present. The heavy reliance on symmetry and cavities within these structures is not coincidental. The symmetrical ornamentation would have worked in a similar manner, causing the energetic particles to vibrate in a constant manner. The flowers within the squares can be understood as similar to acoustic resonators, working to vibrate the ions. It is here that the energy would have been continually manipulated into vibrational and electromagnetic energy of specific frequencies. Really look at these magnificent acoustic resonators. Could you craft one of these by hand today, and at such height? Why would an underdeveloped people spend so much of their time crafting such perfect symmetrical ornamentation, especially if it had no function and was purely aesthetic? They wouldn't.
So that's pretty shocking as well, isn't it? We're getting closer to the truth here. Now, you speak of ether and you ask me, Max, what are you on about? Are you absolutely nuts? There can't be electricity in the air, right? In the air I breathe every day? How is that possible? Well, I will prove it to you. I will show you this other small little video clip from a distinguished gentleman in America that has done this exact experiment and posted it online. Let's have a look at that.
What's up, TikTok? So I'm doing an experiment that I've been wanting to do for a while, and it's measuring the ether or the voltage in the air. And I've got a setup and a little bit of light left. I wanted to show y'all what I've got going on here. So I got my multimeter. The red lead is hooked up to the ground wire. I got the ground rod over there. Black lead is hooked up to a 50-foot spool of 26 gauge magnet wire. And it is actually hooked up to a carbon fiber rod that I sanded down and got bare copper touching it, hooked up to some balloons. So I'm going to be measuring. I have the wire marked at every 10 feet. And so I'm going to measure the voltage at 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, and 40 feet. So I'm going to document this, and I'll be posting the video in a few minutes. Okay, bye. What's up, TikTok? I currently have a set of balloons. I'm running out of daylight here, but I have a carbon rod hooked up to those balloons and the wire connected down to my multimeter. It is grounded into my ground rod. I'm running out of daylight, but right now I'm about 30 feet in the air. I have the wire marked every 10 feet. I'm currently at 24, 27 volts, and I'll show you what happens when I start pulling it down. So right now, I have about 50 feet of wire that I can uncoil, but I'm not going to tonight. I'll do it when I have more daylight. But here's what happens when I start pulling it down. Now here it goes down. About 15 feet. About 10 feet. Even further. So as I pull it down, it gets less voltage that is absorbing from the atmosphere. Light back on. So now we're at roughly 6 feet above my head. And now I'll let the wire go, and you can watch it climb. The higher you go up, the more energy you get. Alright, anyway, I'll make another video tomorrow when I have more light, but that's what they mean when you're harvesting energy from the ether. The higher you go up, the more voltage. That's AC current, 21.5 volts. I'm about 25, 30 feet above my head. Anyway, cheers.
So, as you can see, the gentleman only used a wire and balloons to demonstrate that there is indeed voltage in the air, with no technology whatsoever. Very simple and rudimental experiment, isn't it? Now I'll play you another couple of videos here. As I told you, this will be very heavy with videos. This is another one on the ether from ETHEREUM, explaining everything step by step. I'm gonna play these videos back to back for you.
Ether is the mysterious fifth element. It connects everything electromagnetically through vibrational energy. It is the glue, the web, the driving force behind absolutely everything. The four other elements, air, fire, water, and earth, only exist because of the ether. They are expressions of ether's vibrations. Cymatics is a good example of ether's presence. The frequencies fed through the Chladni plate make the sand or salt form precise and complex geometric shapes. The higher the frequency, the more complex the geometric pattern. But what is the conduit that takes the frequency's vibrations and allows the sand to take such shape? That is the ether at work. That's why we see fruits and vegetables that closely resemble cymatic patterns. It is the ether at work. All matter is ethereal, and the shape and form of that matter are different expressions of the ether, determined by frequency and vibration. Ether is the bridge between electromagnetic frequency and vibrational energy and the form of matter itself. You could call it the Holy Spirit of God.
Interesting is this is the 1890s Los Angeles, right? Look at all those antennas. You think they were gathering lightning? Doesn't make any sense because then the whole place would burn down, but they're all over the place. Now what's interesting is you see this design all over the world, and even Harvard is asking, what is in these and what do they do? Could they be brass balls with mercury in them? Then we look at some other designs and we see that there's usually an antenna on top with some mercury below it, some copper, granite and quartz, and these were actually energy generators. Sounds almost like they were getting free energy. Maybe that's why they also removed all the pipe organs as well. And if we take it a step further, we can see this one, same thing, antenna at the top, mercury cell below, harmonizer, frequency, and energy storage. Almost like one big battery that's gathering energy the entire time and then providing everybody with free electricity. Then if we take it one step further and we look at mercury right here, and you put it in front of a voltmeter, and you begin to spin it, you create voltage. It's almost like those were brass balls filled with mercury that would somehow cause a spin, which would result in electric. Now, if you take copper and do the exact same thing, you don't get any voltage. But the mercury, you get voltage.
Why do we see no wires on the pylons of the old world? Today our streets are filled with these pylons with wires, but the ancients seem to have no wires. In fact, they were harnessing free energy. Have you ever noticed the metal balls which are on all of the ancient buildings? You probably still have them now. These metal balls were filled with mercury, and on top of them was an antenna which was harnessing the electromagnetic energy. This energy was then sent to the mercury, and watch what happens with mercury. This would cause the mercury to spin and create free energy. The word cathedral comes from cathedral, anode and the cathode, because it's creating electricity. All of these buildings around the world all had the same antennas. This is because it was the great Tartarian Empire. Take a look for yourself.
So, that's a good introduction into what we are speaking of here. Let me show you this picture on the screen that you see here now. I would read it out loud for you. Ether makes an appearance on all alchemy manuscripts and periodic tables up until the 19th century. Then it gets removed. Nikola Tesla referred to ether as the superconducting layer of matter which is possible to transport electricity wirelessly, regardless of distance and obstacles. Note the word distance, ladies and gentlemen, very important. Now, let me show you here another couple of clips about who took it away from us. Very important to note before we proceed.
In 1920 is when everything pretty much changed. They started changing every single thing. They started removing certain parts of the history. They started rewriting the history. 1920s is about that time. Educational system started changing everything. Rockefeller educational system. So if you find books, you want to find books before 1920s. Because if you don't find books before 1920s, you're usually being told a bunch of nonsense. And you look at a lot of the free energy books too, and everything related to the ether. That's before 1920s. The ether was removed from the periodic table after 1908. Every book you look into, it talks about ether and terrestrial magnetism and all of these things. 1908, that was removed off the periodic table. And that was removed so that people would not believe in the ether. They would think it's woo-woo. They would think it's pseudoscience. Those are all terms of the Rockefeller educational system. Coming up with terms to debunk the truth and debunk what we were once connected to. Then when you get rid of ether, you get rid of everything related to the fifth element and the quantum. You get rid of all of that. And then you make up a whole new narrative and you remove all that so that when you can't explain something, you just say, I don't know what it is.
St. Louis Post, 1896, to use Earth's electric force, a Nikola Tesla amazing plan to harness free currents. The world is on the eve of an astounding revelation. The conditions under which we exist will be changed. The end has come to telegraph and telephone monopolies. Incidentally, all the other monopolies that depend on power of any kind will come to a sudden stop. The Earth's currents of electricity are to be harnessed. Nature supplies them free of charge. Once the central bankers found out that Nikola Tesla had technology that would provide the entire planet with free renewable energy, they squashed his work. They suppressed the technology. They destroyed his career, and that's the reason why today you have to pay a monthly electricity bill. Wake up.
So that's interesting, right? That's what they did. 1908, they took ether away from the periodic table and has been lying to us ever since. So what I'm telling you here, folks, is absolutely real. It's absolutely documented and true. Let's look at this other picture here that I found, again on Twitter. Another mystery, I read. In the photo you see an 1865 customs terminal on the Pacific coast. Look at the photo. The antennas on the roofs. What are the antennas for if radio waves were discovered in 1893? Historians believe that before the scientific discoveries of the 19th and 20th century, mankind used similar principle in lighting cities and homes, in controlling transportation, in transmitting information wirelessly. Some talk about the free atmospheric electricity that people used all over the world. And at the end of the 19th century, a scientific and technological breakthrough began. The world was becoming generally the same as it is now. Electric and gasoline motors, radio communication, and big corporations making a profit out of all of it. Profits that could not be made with the widespread free use of atmospheric electricity and wireless communication of the time. So that's pretty interesting, isn't it? Let me show you these other pictures that we saw on the videos before. Here you have your structure with your antenna, your mercury cell, your harmonizer, frequency, and energy storage. They all work basically on the same principle. Let me show you another interesting picture here that I found. That is loading very slowly, I apologize. This is an old building, 1875. We look at those spires, we look at the spire on the roofs of the building. Where are they today in 2021? They have been removed. Why? Now, let us discuss the engine, where the power is absorbed in the clip that I will play for you now. Remarkable stuff indeed. Absolutely incredible. Here we go.
The cavity resonators and magnetrons would have had to have worked in partnership with a central engine, or reactor, contained within all these structures. Both resonator and reactor are interesting words. Just like the words conductor, generator, creator, and the name Mercator, they all contain the word Tor within their linguistic structure. They hold a linguistic memory and pay homage to the torus or toroidal field. The torus is the flow of electromagnetism. Without this flow of energy, there would be no life on Earth. No one can really know for sure, but some have suggested that the engine was probably similar to a fusion reactor. The traces of these engines can be found within all of the larger generators. The empty shell of where the engine used to reside is usually, but not always, octagonal. It's been right in front of our faces the whole time. The controllers remove the engines, sometimes repurposing the space as baptistries and bandstands, sometimes just leaving the base either barren or attempting to cover them up. We see these octagonal structures in cathedrals, government buildings, mosques, and detached bandstands. And unless they have been repurposed, these structures seem to hold no overall function. They do not contribute to the overall structure. They appear superfluous and unnecessary. Theories have surfaced that the engines or central technological mechanism was similar to a tokamak. And while I do not subscribe to this idea, which will become evident as to why later in our journey, for now we will use it for illustrative purposes. A tokamak is a powerful device that uses a magnetic field to produce plasma in the form of a torus. The contemporary tokamaks we see are used in thermonuclear fusion power. The tokamak's toroidal field, in conjunction with the vibrating ions from the ether, would have produced a highly conductive electromagnetic field of gases called plasma, just like our sun and ionosphere. If those of the old world used anything closely resembling a tokamak's capability, then the result would have been an abundance of free, powerful, clean electromagnetic energy that could fuel entire cities and the entire Earth. These were never churches, cathedrals, castles, and parliament buildings. They were all huge engine generators.
Electric power is everywhere present in unlimited quantities and can drive the world's machinery without the need of coal, oil, gas, or any other fuel. This new power for the driving of the world's machinery will be derived from the energy which operates the universe, the cosmic energy.
Now, I put this picture up on the screen in case you missed it in the small clip I just played you. I cropped this out of this video so I could show you. This is the machinery. It's octagonal in shape. This was part of the complex machinery that we now cannot find. If you notice on the photo, it is octagonal. It's got a structure on top of it with all those cables, wires, whatever that structure is. The antenna going up and the ball on top. It is obviously in a domed structure like a church or a cathedral. That's what it looks like to me anyway. So I don't know if this is true or not, but this is the only picture I've ever found in all my studies that actually shows one of these machines. So I thought I'd show you because I find this absolutely fascinating. Now another very fascinating video I will show you now about the plasma energy that Iwar Anon was talking about. This is probably how it could have worked, more or less. Let me play you this really cool little clip that is so fun to watch. Here we go. So isn't that just really awesome to watch? I mean, for a nerd like me, I see stuff like that, I get all excited and sweaty. So we have seen in the clips here how it does appear that cities were indeed built like some kind of circuit board, with large electromagnets as the Arc de Triomphe in Paris or other places. We see them all over the old world. Now, behold this image I will show you here of the floor of a church, for example. It gives me goosebumps every time I see this. Here on the picture, you will see Chartres Cathedral, using the Schumann resonance for healing since 1200s. And let me remind you that Schumann resonance was not discovered until late 1800. This is the main reason why you can feel godly presence in these ancient temples and churches. They are tuned into certain frequencies which are beneficial for healing of our bodies. Ancient builders were masters of energy, vibration, and frequencies. Let me show you a close-up of this floor. There we go. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a bloody circuit board. That's exactly what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. This cannot be explained any other way. I will show you this other picture here from Paris, where we clearly see the Arc de Triomphe in the center of the picture, and all the buildings around it laid out like a grid. Now this is the grid. I will show you this other picture that I think is from Barcelona, but don't quote me on that. Doesn't this look like a motherboard? It does to me. There is a reason why they built structures this way. It wasn't only for convenience of transportation on roads. All of this served a higher purpose in my view. If cities were indeed constructed this way, it would not be a long stretch to imagine that all buildings in the area would be able to collect the energy created from the generator placed in a specific grid, with the electromagnet arches working as capacitors or amplifiers on its journey. Why would those buildings have antennas back in the day? There was no radio to speak of, right? like we saw on the picture that I showed you before, this one here. What were those antennas for if radio was invented later? So now let's discuss energy distribution for a moment. I can't say with absolute certainty, but it does appear that the frequency generation inside the cathedrals was a way of distributing the electricity. Another way was water. So let's begin looking at frequency as a thing. I'll play you this really sweet little clip of our friend Kermit the Frog. You see what happens to the frog when it does this thing? What happens to the water? Yeah, you see, nature tells us something important, doesn't it? Absolutely. We have seen in previous clips how the windows of these structures were identical to frequency patterns, right? They are way too familiar to be discarded in this discussion. There's something extremely important for us to learn here, in my view. Let me see, I can't find the picture. I don't have the picture. Okay. So let's just play another couple of videos here for you to understand.
People know that cathedrals of old were actually massive energy conductors. The pipe organs they housed produced frequencies which vibrated at perfect resonance with the sacred geometry of our realm. These structures were able to emit a resonance which had healing and electrical properties, drawing upon the ether or atmospheric energy. The geometrical patterns found in the windows perfectly correspond to the vibration of water when put under a microscope, which corresponds perfectly to the sound these organs made. What if we were to tap into their powers and use them once more as they were intended?
If these openings in these cathedrals, as they say, were frequency resonators, it would then make sense to use them to strengthen another technology they had in their possession, namely bells. The bells are always tuned to a certain frequency, and they were used for healing. Once they rang, the cathedral resonator increased its strength and spread this frequency across the city. Free frequency healing for all inhabitants, free of charge. So, of course, they had to be destroyed, as I will show you here.
Think of the big bells that used to be all over the world, but they destroyed all of them after World War II. Why did they destroy all the bells after World War II? Because if you sit in a bell and someone hits it and it begins to resonate, you can begin to heal like that. Because sound frequency instantaneously heals the body, similar to chanting. If you any sound effect will begin to instantly structure all of the body at the same time. That's what used to happen in the cathedrals. They would ring the bells or they would play the pipe organs, and all of the cells in the body would instantaneously become structured, which would instantly heal them. But they had to get rid of the pipe organs, which are made from lead, which is interesting, and they had to get rid of the bells, because both of those can heal people. Now imagine if a bell of the size of the massive bells we were shown was ringing in a cathedral, okay? Now imagine the frequency that would come out of the cathedral into the town. You could heal the entire town instantaneously just by ringing the bell in the cathedral. They had to break all those bells. All the bells you ever look up. Just type in like bell in whatever country or city you're in, and notice how all the bells have a crack in them and they're broken. I wonder why that is.
They tell us they were removed and melted down for ammunition in one of their many ill-fought wars at our expense. But what we were intentionally not made to realize is just how important these bells were in the old world. Churches, temples, buildings adorned with bell towers were not just idle places of worship. They were the healing centers of the old world, operating similar to the principles of the Rife machine, using frequency and vibration, a technology and capability known very well in the old world. Why would we be allowed such empowering freedoms? There is no profit and control to be had in a healthy patient.
Now, another means of possible distribution is water. I cannot see how this would work worldwide, with oceans and all, but there are certain areas where this must have been the case. So, I give you the Star Fort, what you see on your picture on the screen. These structures are absolutely magnificent. They are constructed in a manner that is just as mysterious as all the others, only better in my view. The scope and magnitude of these structures cannot be underestimated, and if you consider the fact that they exist worldwide, it only goes to show that they were part of a civilization that stretched the entire world as we know it. Let me show you this really cool clip in this regard that explains it very, very well.
They wanted us to know that once harnessed, the ethereal electromagnetic energy could be fused with water, so it could be stored and distributed. And once produced, the water could be manipulated, enhanced, and elevated to a level of new possibilities through the use of vibration, frequency, and sound itself. Their civilization depended on the industry of what we will call the living waters. Their technological advancement enabled them to transform the entire Earth into a power grid. But this grid was only possible because of water. The civilization of the future was an electromagnetic water world. Canals are no great secret. They are found everywhere across our realm, both the great and the small. Most of the great canals around our Earth are connected to the ocean. Salt water is an excellent conductor of electricity. Sodium chloride is ionized. We have the Corinth Canal, connected to the Aegean Sea. We have the Panama Canal that connects both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The Suez Canal connects with the Mediterranean Sea. And there is the Volga-Don Canal, connecting the Azov Sea, Caspian Sea, and Black Sea with the major oceanic networks. All of the canals built before the 1920s were not built by us or those in the history books. We inherited them. And while the official narrative tells us that the Volga-Don was finished during the 1950s, its construction actually began back in the 16th century. All narratives surrounding the construction of these canals is purely fabricated, and I will show you how much later in our journey. Once you start paying attention, it becomes very evident that most continents and countries feature a combination of canals and rivers that span the entirety of the land itself. The citizens of the old world utilize the oceans and rivers to create a grid of interconnected waterways to provide water to all of their areas of habitation. In order to pass difficult sections and keep the supply going, they would build aqueducts and viaducts. Sometimes these were constructed with the purpose of energizing the water as it passed through and into different areas, and that is why many were designed with symmetrical archivolt structures. The Romans did not build these structures. The entire infrastructure of so many cities found across our realm are designed around canal systems. Look at Amsterdam from above. The precise geometric grid lines here are not roads, they are canals, and the sole purpose was to supply water from one area to another. The water was stored and manipulated for a variety of purposes in reservoirs, water towers, pumping stations, cisterns, and other structures. The water also functioned to provide necessary balance. A complex grid of electromagnetic production, distribution, and consumption would generate a lot of heat and magnetism. Water provided not only a balance of diamagnetism, but also ensured the entire grid did not overheat. When looking at all the magnificent generators and other instruments of power from the old world, we can always find water nearby, or the remains of water storage. Sometimes this is hidden primarily underground. Many do not realize that many so-called Victorian cisterns and reservoirs run very far under a lot of our cities, and other times it is a central characteristic feature of these structures, an example of which is what the controllers have redesignated as castle moats. The electromagnetic water grid was not just an energized version of what we are already familiar with in our cities and towns. It was much, much, much more. It was way more magnificent, impressive, and futuristic than we could even imagine. The grid was connected to central, bigger power stations, or what is more appropriately termed star stations. Sometimes these were isolated stations, and other times they comprised entire cities. We are going to have to fly to a higher altitude for this. I need to show you. Hold on tight now and keep your eyes open. Look. The sole existence, let alone construction, of these star structures is almost beyond our comprehension. As you saw, they are found everywhere across our realm, with undeviating geometric consistency. A wondrous impossibility. Perhaps they had some kind of technology that allowed them to view huge areas of land from above while planning and building. They were never forts. That is a fairy tale invented by our controllers. The stunning geometric precision and symmetry of the star structures would most likely have functioned to enhance the power of the generators and to etherize the water, or turn the water into living, energized water. We can see from comparing some of these ruined sites, and some left a little more intact, that water would have been present throughout the structure. Before the controllers destroyed and drained most of these structures, they were full of water. They were connected to rivers and canals and the oceans. They were a key component of the entire power grid. The star structures are fractals of symmetrical geometry, just like many of the ceilings of these huge energy generators. And, like the acoustic cavity magnetrons and resonators, the symmetrical sharp diagonal walls would have caused the ions to perpetually vibrate. Old plans and illustrations, which have no doubt been edited or manipulated in some way or another, offer suggestion as to how complex, integrated, and essential the star geometry was to the entire grid. Look at Paris here. It isn't obvious at first glance, but upon closer inspection, we come to realize that the entirety of Paris was itself a star station, or a star city. And like with everything else constructed in the old world, these structures were at once functional and a celebration of the source of their innovation. Look closer at the star geometry here. Can you see the resemblance? The snowflake. Do you remember what happened in Masaru Emoto's experiment on water? Ethereal vibration expressing itself through water's molecular structure. Those of the old world had perfected this science. They knew the key to releasing electromagnetism's potential was through sound and water. Just imagine what they were able to achieve.
That is pretty remarkable, if you ask me. I will now show you another video here very quickly that defies explanation, but it's about another star fort.
Fort Jefferson, they built this in 1846, 16 million bricks. Okay, so here's the craziest thing about this. So I believe it's 70 miles-ish off the coast of Florida. On the Gulf side, who did they think was going to attack them from that vantage point? It's also 70 miles off the coast, so it could easily be avoided. You know, like you're not protecting the mainland United States with that fort. And the craziest part about all of it was there's no fresh water on that island.
No water, yeah, no water.
Try to wrap your mind around what the purpose of this place was based on the timeline we're taught that it was built. It makes no sense whatsoever. And what we're told is they sent prisoners and people like that over there to build it. And it's the most complicated masonry style of how they would put the bricks together.
And all that stuff,
We can't even fathom 16 million bricks. But they would have had to ship the bricks 70 miles, boatloads of them. And then they did what with this place?
Nothing,
It's all a lie. It's all a lie. I mean, that's all you can really say is that that was there before. We don't know when that was there. We don't know who used it and for what reason. But we know that they didn't build that thing as some kind of outpost for potentially the future civil war that's going to happen.
Yeah,
or the British. Again, it's like on the Gulf side of Florida. Like, it's really not good strategically. But like I said, with no fresh water.
Isn't that absolutely remarkable? What does a star fort do in the middle of the ocean between Cuba and Florida, right? Makes absolutely no sense. Now, I will give you here a website where you can track them all. I personally lose hours on this website. Please go and find one close to you if you can. Go and look at it and admire this technology. The website is www.starforts.com. Very simple, very easy. Now, I also wish to show you what living waters look like today. I have studied this issue and I'm currently practicing this with my own water that I use and drink. I have a basically religious experience and connection to water. I'm currently collecting all my own rainwater, free of pollutants and free of charge, by the way. I bathe the water with 528 Hz frequency, thus creating structured living water. Now, our bodies are composed of 70% or more of water, so imagine what it does to us humans when we absorb it. I absolutely adore H2O. It's the closest thing to the Creator that we have and can touch. So show it the respect it deserves, please. It will pay you back with interest. Here I will show you now on the screen another little Twitter thing. Here it says, in ancient times, winding waterways were used to wind through the courtyards of traditional stone mansions. These paths created a rhythmic singing of water as it flowed and gave the environment a sense of coolness. The main purpose was to provide psychophysiological relaxation for humans. Isn't that really interesting? I'll show you another couple of very, very sweet little clips here in this regard, right here. I do understand that this is an issue that is hard to digest, and I admit I do not have all the answers. But something deep inside me very much resonates with this theory, and until I see somebody debunking it properly, I will stick to it. Now, it also helps when I find little clips like the one I'm about to show you. With this technology, ethereal technology, that is being reactivated. By whom, I ask? We don't know. But the fact that news of this is occurring and now circulating on the web is a good thing in my view. We need to have more eyes and ears on this subject if we want to reach answers and reach proper conclusions. So I'll play you this back to back and you tell me what you think. Now, isn't that just absolutely unbelievable? If you noticed the video, the middle video from Cambodia, the royal palace, there was plasma coming out of that antenna on top. And they were manipulating the plasma with frequency and tones from what I suppose is an organ or something similar to that. So this stuff can be reactivated. This stuff can be reactivated, and free energy is a real thing. So that's why we are now going back to the future. Now I will start talking about a different topic here, all related, but it's just one of those other things that you need to see in order to have a full picture of where we stand. We're going to talk about the world fairs. Now, this fantastic empire went out in a bang, so to speak. The Khazarian mafia controllers had eliminated most of the infrastructure and kept on doing it until World War II, when nothing was left. In a celebration of what it was, and somehow a slap in the face for the rest of us, they organized at the turn of the 19th, 20th century what we called the World Fairs. We know that they were displayed in various cities around the world. I know of Chicago, San Francisco, St. Louis, Paris, and London. But there were more that I haven't documented yet. This was the last time the old infrastructure was used in public before it was all completely dismantled, blown up. The narrative at the time was that these buildings were constructed for display only, made of plaster and the like, and they were absolutely magnificent, as you will see. These were the last remnants of an empire that was destroyed. Now let me start showing you, step by step here, what it used to look like. Here we have Chicago.
The pillars are pure marble. They're not wood. You can use the Field Museum as an example, located in Chicago. Now here we have another incredible construction photo, where for some reason there isn't much construction going on, just a building with more scaffolding. So my question is, how have they gotten away with this nonsense for so long? That is not construction. I can clearly see that the building is done. Just because someone put a ladder in front of it doesn't mean this is being constructed. This is the process that painters use. Any painter will confirm this. And also imagine carrying these materials up that scaffolding. If this was really a construction photo, it would be impossible and very embarrassing because nobody would be able to do it. Does anyone see a crane? Anywhere? No. Once you know, you know. You don't go back to believing in the lies because they are ridiculous. We have more tech in the background here. There are two of them, actually. And here we have a bunch of people that found this building. Let's take a second and look at the size of this thing. This was the Palace of Electricity. Could you imagine this being constructed today? This thing is unbelievable. And remember, there were so many of these buildings being thrown together in like 2 years, supposedly, at the same exact time. Oh, and they are all dated 1803, not 1903. And what happened to the Palace of Electricity? We were told that these buildings were practically worthless, and they ended up in dump sites because they were just made of wood, right? The problem with that is that they are contradicting themselves. The Missouri History Museum states that the construction for the Palace of Electricity and Machinery costed them $412,000, which is the equivalent to $11.48 million today in 2023. So it's practically worthless? Or is it 11.4 million? This is the kind of stuff that makes me fully trust the mainstream narrative. I love just knowing deep down that they would never lie to us. It's just really nice to know. I love that they provide us with full logistical details. They never contradict themselves. They go that extra mile to make sure that what we are being told is exactly what happened. Oh, they don't do any of that? No, they don't do any of that. Literally none of it. The titles state,
I will show you another little video here about San Francisco. This is an AI rendering, CGI, but it's based on the actual photos to produce this composite. Look at the majesty of this place. Let it sink in. We don't have anything like this in our realm today. Here we go.
More than 130 years ago, the city of Chicago, Illinois seemed too grand to be real. This was the location of the 1893 World's Fair, also known as the Columbian Exposition. At the heart of this historical phenomenon was an ephemeral metropolis known as the White City. The fairgrounds sprawled over 600 acres, featuring more than 200 monumental structures that defied imagination. The Manufacturers and Liberal Arts Building alone covered nearly 32 acres. With the capacity to fit 4 of the great Roman Colosseum inside and seat 300,000 people, its vastness was almost incomprehensible. One of the event's most iconic images is the 65-foot golden statue of the Republic, gleaming in the sun and towering over the central lagoon of an elaborate canal system. Borrowing ideas from ancient Venice, visitors could cover more territory by traveling in Venetian-style gondolas through the canals that spanned most of the fairgrounds. Norway even sailed a full-sized replica of a Viking ship across the ocean to be put on display. Approximately 27 million people from around the world were introduced to foods that have since become universally recognizable, such as peanut butter, Hershey's chocolate, Pabst Blue Ribbon, Cracker Jacks, Juicy Fruit Gum, and Vienna sausages, to name a few. The integration of electrical power into nearly every aspect of our lives can, in many ways, be traced back to this event. Electricity lit the night, with the grounds illuminated by more than 100,000 incandescent light bulbs, a recently patented invention at the time. Technological marvels such as the first practical electric automobile and the first electric kitchen with an automatic dishwasher were also introduced. The entertainment area brought to the public the concept of amusement parks, with attractions, sideshows, international villages, and the first widespread use of souvenir merchandise like postcards, coins, and other memorabilia. Interestingly, spray paint and the concept of whitewashing can also be traced to the fair. The very first Ferris wheel was created for the event by bridge builder and steel magnate George Washington Gale Ferris. As the story goes, he sought to rival the Eiffel Tower, the highlight of the 1889 Paris Fair. At 264 feet tall, his wheel could accommodate 2,160 people at a time and offered panoramic views of the entire fairgrounds. The precursor to the electric moving sidewalk from the 1900 Paris Expo was also debuted in Chicago. It was constructed on the pier to save people from having to walk the 2,500-foot length to and from their steamships. Much like its successor in Paris, there were multiple platforms moving at different speeds in a looping circuit. The first platform was for standing and moved at only 3 miles per hour, while the second, fitted with benches, moved slightly faster at 6 miles per hour. As we delve deeper into the World's Fair events, a pattern begins to emerge, one that seems to defy the conventional history we've all been taught. In cities all over the world, we consistently see the same grand and ornate structures, civil engineering and infrastructure projects being constructed on a colossal scale within an impossible time frame. Less than 30 years after the Civil War, we find cities like Chicago looking as if they could be part of Vatican City or anywhere else in Old World Europe. Yet we're told that everything was built using wood, plaster, and temporary materials, with the intention of demolishing them when the fair ended. However, without exception, some isolated buildings still stand today because some were constructed with permanent materials. Everything else got destroyed. But we get a glimpse of the craftsmanship involved through structures like the Art Institute of Chicago and the Museum of Science and Industry. In Chicago's case, the majority of the fairgrounds didn't need to be demolished because they were conveniently destroyed by fire a few months after the event ended. Why were certain ones constructed from permanent materials? And why did they so often hold the title of the world's largest building at the time? It raises the question, How could the world's largest buildings have been constructed using mostly temporary materials? Are we to believe that just over a century ago, people made a habit of building some of the largest, most magnificent, and ornate buildings ever seen, only to use them for a few months? Even if we disregard the buildings themselves, the earthworks involved in these projects would challenge modern capabilities and equipment under such tight timelines. And most importantly, why would they do all of this just to destroy it? Could the World's Fair events have been the perfect cover to hide the remnants of a unified global system that existed before the upheaval of the Civil War and 2 world wars were used to reshape our world? The similarities between the narratives surrounding the fairs, the architecture, and the scale all seem to point to something more than coincidence. It suggests a carefully orchestrated erasure of a past we were never meant to remember. We have to ask ourselves, how much of our history has been rewritten? What has been lost? And how much has been hidden in plain sight?
That was the Chicago World Fair, which was absolutely spectacular and magnificent. I will now show you another little clip here from San Francisco. And this is original footage. So that's pretty fascinating, isn't it? I mean, especially when we can look at the original footage from these places. It's remarkable, absolutely remarkable. Now let me show you on screen here what the San Francisco World Fair used to look like, 1915, on the top of your screen. Now this is what, on the bottom, is what San Francisco looks like in 2023. Now you will notice that on the bottom part of the bottom picture, they have left one structure, that semi-oval kind of construction, that was actually left behind. Everything else was destroyed. That's what they usually do. Every single World Fair has one building remaining as testimony to what it used to be. A slap in the face, so to speak. I will show you this one as well, which I find absolutely fascinating, and I can't explain it. Here it says, the 1915 International Exhibition in San Francisco was erected in 1 year, and numerous fountains were placed in the park. Nothing unusual until nightfall. Then they shone with unimaginable brightness, dwarfing the most powerful street lamps. No substation, no wires connected to the lights, no switches. Scientists don't want to explain how such power was distributed. What we're looking at here is a column of light. How is that even possible? How is that even possible? Now, moving on to the other side of the pond, in the meantime, we had the World Fair in Paris, which is what I show you here. We have the Eiffel Tower. We saw all of these buildings in previous clips that I showed you in the past chapters, that is. But if you notice also here, on the bottom side of the picture here, you see this little rendering of what appears to be a round structure with 2 big antennas coming up, or big towers. You see it on your screen? Well, that has been taken away. It was just eliminated. And the bottom picture there in color, you can see how that place looks today. But in the middle there was a structure with 2 towers. That was taken away. I think that was the generator that was removed. The Eiffel Tower was the antenna. Moving on, here we have another picture from Paris. The grand entrance at the Paris Exposition and antennas for harnessing free energy, they say. Let's take a closer look at the Eiffel Tower here, which is also a very fascinating subject. It says here the Eiffel Tower was conceived as the entrance arch to an exhibition held in 1889. The exhibition showcased advances in energy and the latest inventions. The 1900 photo of the tower shows structures that have not survived to this day. At the same time, the structure gave off illumination, no worse than the days of Catherine the Great from the ether electricity. So if you look at the left-hand side picture, that boring structure you see, compare that to the right-hand side with all those little cupolas and stuff. And how was it electrified exactly? In 1889, when the light bulb was invented in 1904. These are questions I have. Pretty relevant questions, I might add. Let's look at this other picture. I do not understand what this picture on the left represents, but there we have those huge spirals going down. Is that even real? I have no idea. But it looks very curious to me. Maybe this picture was made during the construction of the tower? I don't know. But I must say that if this was constructed at the time, they put a lot of energy into this, that's for sure. On the right-hand side, we have the exhibition picture with the tower in the center, and look at that architecture in the background. Absolutely spectacular. All gone. We don't have that anymore. Let's move on to St. Louis in the US. Here it says on the left, St. Louis World Fair 1904. According to the mainstream narrative, it was constructed from a material called staff, a mixture of plaster of Paris and hemp fibers on a wood frame, and along with many other magnificent structures, it was taken down after the exposition. I look at this picture, I wonder, would you construct something like this temporarily? Really? We wouldn't even do that today with modern technology. Here we have another picture that was mentioned before, construction of one of the buildings from the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. I wonder why the columns have the date 1803 on them, 100 years before. We need to ask questions, folks. And I have plenty. Here we have another nice picture I found of the St. Louis, Missouri Fair, 1904. This is how it looked like. And then they blew it all up. Now let's proceed here with the moving walkway in Chicago. This is a nice little clip, and it's original. Now we have to talk about another very important section here, and something that you need to understand. Mainly, electrification before its time. Much of this was pictured and filmed before the invention of the light bulb. Please explain that to me. How is that even possible? And also explain to me, who did all the wiring of each of these millions of light bulbs? Well, The answer is pretty easy. They did not need wires. The Khazarian mafia showed us what it was, then they blew it all up, and humanity forgot. Until today. We are, mark my words, going back to the future. This shall not stand in any way. Let me show you this glorious picture from the time.
This is Coney Island in 1905. Perhaps this beautiful nighttime bird's eye view was given to us by an airship, as I can't think of anything else at the time that could give us such a nice stable shot from way up high. It's always fascinating that everything that seemed to be built at that period, even our amusement parks, were built with such beauty, like a palace. Now, if you've seen the current Coney Island, you can see it's definitely lost some of its beauty and glamour from back then. Hard to imagine this is from over 100 years ago. Sure, this was a totally different experience all around from today's amusement parks. Nowadays, can't even get in the gate without paying $100, and then standing in line for hours and hours, and every little aspect about our amusement parks, from the food to the concessions to the souvenirs, it's all about sucking us for as much money as they can. I don't see any of that going on here. All that architecture from back then was built to uplift and inspire humanity, even in its amusement parks. Sadly, this magical place, the original Coney Island, burned down in 1911 by a fire. Like so many other great works from the old world, lost by a coincidental fire. I'm sure that doesn't come as much of a shock to a lot of you. Beautiful history erased, piece by piece, fire by fire. Question everything, friends. Until next time.
So there you have it, folks. 1905. The light bulb was invented, supposedly, a year before that. I mean, explain that to me. Invented, that doesn't mean it was in production, okay? Here we have another picture. Illumination of the Kremlin of the day of the inauguration of Nicholas II. This is hard to believe, especially when we are drummed from birth about the backward Russia, wooden Russia, like we had no civilization, no progress. But in the photo we see illumination of the Kremlin with electric bulbs in honor of the coronation of Nicholas II. A drum roll in 1896. Photo taken from the Central State Archive of Film and Photo Documents in St. Petersburg. 1896, people. 1896. Let that sink in. I'll show you another absolutely beautiful picture that is colorized. Very nice to look at. Look at the majesty of this thing. Do you think they had technologies that we don't have today? I really believe they did. We have another one here. Look at the majesty of this. There's so much light that, I mean, it's just staggering. I could imagine walking through these places as a child. I would have been absolutely blown away, right? Another one. There we go. Look at the amount of light bulbs they must have used here. It's absolutely spectacular. Then we end the presentation showing you this other two tidbits of information that I found that is really remarkable. On the left-hand side it says, we've been told that electrical power debuted at the Chicago World's Fair in 1893. But here it is at the 1888 Cotton States Exposition in New Orleans, Louisiana. Okay, so that was quite a bit of time before. On the right-hand side, I have pointed out this before, but I didn't get proper traction. Why are electrics integrated into the materials of the buildings themselves? Why are the light bulbs attached to the sides and the top of these globes on these old world banisters? Inside them. How do you wire that exactly? I mean, stop and think for a second. How do you wire that inside, let's say, a marble structure? How is that even possible? So, yes, folks, we have been lied to. We have been lied to on an astronomical scale. And that is why the story of Tartaria is so close to my heart, because once I realized this, my life could never be the same. I look at everything in a different way now. And etheric energy is a real thing. We have proven that. We have proven that there is electricity in the air. So my question is, why am I still paying an electricity bill in my house? Why do I have cables uglifying the landscape out on my streets? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves. And what's even worse, we have to recognize who took all of this away from us. The Khazarian mafia. It's always them. It never ends. So in the book, there are all the documentaries downloadable. If you go to Amazon and you find it, there you can see all the documentaries that are based this story upon. There are plenty, and there is at least some, I would say, 20 hours of information there for you to watch, including all of Ivar Anon's work, which is, that itself is 7 hours long. So please do go there and take a look, and it's a good reason to purchase the book, because all of this stuff is included in the price. So that's all for me today. I hope I woke up some minds. So max out, and peace to you all, as always.